Okay, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of your focus driven day with your podcaster, Lyman Montgomery. I am so glad that you are here. Today, we have a special segment on the podcast where we're going to talk about mental health. You know, mental health is one of those, unfortunately, we really don't like to talk about it, especially in communities of color. And I'm so glad to have with me a special guest. I'm going to introduce her shortly. And today we want to talk about healing from emotional and physical loneliness during this season of the pandemic. As all of us have been dealing with the pandemic, the crisis, the coronavirus, the shelter in place. Uh, what we haven't really talked about are the number of people who don't have family members, especially in two age categories. Those being those over the age of 65, where maybe they have a health condition that doesn't allow them to be able to physically interact with their loved ones, with their family members, or just with their normal routine that may have consisted of going out, let's say their house of worship. And they're finding themselves trapped in their home and oftentimes dealing with loneliness. And so, our guest today, I am so excited. I'm so glad you are here. Is Leanna White. Leanna, I am so glad you are here. Now, you are affectionately known as Pearly White. Now, I got
That's
to
right.
know, just sort of like the behind the scenes before we get into our topic. Where did that name Pearly White come from?
So, pearly white. My birthstone is actually pearls, and a
Oh,
pearl originates from something. The oyster goes through this really rough transition. So, pearl, Lee, short for Leanna, and then white. So, pearly white. A lot of people are like, "Is it because you're always smiling?" And I'm like, "No," but that could be it. But
I actually, I'll be honest, I was thinking because I see you, I follow you on Instagram, Facebook, you're always smiling. So I was thinking,
oh,
maybe someone said her teeth are so white that they're pearly white. Of course, your
I
last name
hope.
is White. And so, no, that's pretty cool. And so, what I would like to know is tell us a little bit about who you are, some of your credentials. For those that may not be familiar with you, I know you have a huge following on Instagram, and I know that you are doing some amazing things. And we had an opportunity to meet in Orlando. We
Woo!
were at a
It was
conference,
amazing.
and it was right before the pandemic. And
Yes.
I think it was at the early part because they were still doing sanitizing, but really didn't have a
Mhm.
lot of the social distancing.
Right.
And it was an amazing conference. And we happened to
Mhm.
sit, my partner and I, and you and your best friend were sitting at the same table.
Right.
And the energy that you were giving off was just amazing that I knew, and my
Oh,
partner said the same thing, that we had to connect with you. And I'm so glad that we did. So just tell a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, credentials, so that our audience can get an opportunity to learn more about this Leanna Pearly White.
all right. So, again, as he mentioned, my name is Leanna White. My background. So, let me just go back a little bit. I'm originally from West Virginia. Lyman, you're from Ohio. So,
Ohio,
the
yes.
tri state.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. So, I'm from a small town, Huntington, West Virginia. I miss it. It's, home will always be home. But my background, I have 2 degrees in social work. I have my bachelor's and my master's in social work, mental health in particular. I am a licensed graduate social worker. I do therapy part time. I have started my LLC, so I'm stemming the therapy piece of it and going into the coaching route. So I'm
Oh,
so excited about that. Yeah, it's really rewarding. So,
yeah. Let me ask you this: 2 degrees in social work. Now,
mhm.
when I was in school, I'm not going to tell you many, many years ago, we always had a great affinity for social workers. because we
Mhm.
knew they were like starving artists. They have a lot of training, and they do it more from the passion side. They're,
Right.
they're not looking to get wealthy. Uh,
No.
and so, what was it that kind of drove you to a degree, not one but two degrees in social work?
Yeah, so I actually switched my major multiple times. I switched from like speech pathology. I wanted to be, sorry, I switched from hearing interpreting to speech pathology. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, that wasn't for me. So then I did social work. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it. Because social work, I mean, that's my life. I have always dealt with the social worker from, medical issues with my family members in the hospital or social workers
Mm,
from dealing with the domestic violence that I witnessed, growing up in the household with my mom and dad. So I've always been around a social worker. So I'm like, let me see what this is about. So yeah,
I see. So, would you say it was really a true passion of yours?
absolutely.
That were you the type of kid that was always helping to solve other people's problems?
Always. Hi, my name
Yeah.
is Leanna, and I noticed that you were frowning. So can you tell me? That was me.
That was something that a lot of times people are saying, I'm trying to find my purpose. And I
Mhm.
believe that you don't find your purpose, you discover your purpose inside of you. And
Right.
one of the ways that people can have an indication of what their purpose, I always say, what keeps you up late at night or gets you up early
Hmm.
in the morning? Or
Yep.
when you were a child, what did the teachers tell you to stop doing? For me, I could not shut up. I was always creating. If there were two or three
Hmm.
kids fighting, then I was in the middle
Hmm.
trying to say, now let's talk about this.
Right.
Now, why
Right.
do you want to punch this person in the nose?
Exactly.
And so I was always mediating. I was always a problem solver, and I always wanted to understand why people behaved the way they behaved. And I didn't even know that there was such thing as life coaching or mentoring
Hmm.
until I started seeing people in the field many years later. And I remember in college, I wanted to be a healthcare administrator.
Okay.
And I was in graduate school and I took a course in human resources. At that time, it was called industrial relations. And I said, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And I spent a
Right.
couple of years in healthcare, hated it. And then I
Mm.
found my true passion, really doing what I'm doing now and haven't
Right.
looked back. Went through a route of 20 plus years in human resources. And so I wanted to ask that question about discovering one's purpose. And that leads me into our first segment. And you kind of alluded to this, but I want you to expound if you can. You talked
Hmm.
about the early years of domestic violence. Tell
Right.
us a little bit about what's your personal journey to wholeness. I mean, what happened or what caused you to say, you know what, I need to expand my own thinking, or so just
Hmm.
tell a bit about your own personal journey to wholeness.
Yeah, so my personal journey to wholeness it's been rough to say the least. It's been really long. I've had my ups, my downs. Um, so I mentioned before that I grew up in a household where I witnessed domestic violence. My dad was really abusive, physically, emotionally, verbally towards my mom. He was more emotionally and verbally abusive to me, not physically. So I grew up not really knowing what love was from a male figure. I
Wow.
did have my pawpaw, my grandpa, my mom's dad or whatever, but he passed away. So I had him. He passed away right around the same time that I was going through this, and so um, I really didn't know like what love looked like. So
Mm.
that led me to getting in relationships that I knew I was well that I knew wasn't good for me. And so it was just an emotional roller coaster. I knew something had to change. So
Let me ask you this. How old
yeah.
when you started dating? Did you start dating like in your preteens or later in your teens?
I was definitely later in my teens. I was like the girl that I was everybody's friend. So I was like the cool chick. So I hung out with everybody. And so I didn't start dating till later. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. One of the things that I often think about in any type of abusive relationships, and of course there are different levels of abuse, right? You
Right.
have those that have suffered, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and then there are those that they may not have been physically abused or
Hmm.
sexually abused, but maybe they had a family member that was just distant, that was cold.
Right.
Maybe they didn't really know how to love or how
Hmm.
to give love, because I think it's difficult to give what you probably have not received before.
Right.
And so, growing up, when did the abuse start for you?
So my dad was in my life from age 5 to 10. So
Okay.
within those 5 years, yeah.
And was it a divorce? Is that how he exited, or?
Yeah, so it
Okay.
was a divorce. It was court mandated. So we had a DVP against him because of the violence.
Now,
So
for those of us that don't know, what is it called?
DVP, I guess it's
Yeah.
called, there's different names for each state, I
Okay.
think, but it's pretty much a protective order.
Got you.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, through, domestic violence, dealing with domestic violence. Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
Hmm.
And so this set you on this journey
Right.
where you started dating. Now, the guys that you dated, were they completely different than your dad, or were they similar? What type of guys were you attracted to?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that they were manipulative. So they may not have been verbally abusive or, anything like that, but they were definitely manipulative. So, the smooth talking guys that would say whatever you wanted to hear just to get what they wanted. So
Yes,
those type of men. So for some reason I just gravitated towards, because I mean that's what I knew, within that short time frame. So yeah.
sure, sure. And I think that there are a number of individuals that could probably relate. And by the way,
Mhm.
those of you that are watching, please leave a comment. If you have a question for our guest, please go ahead and post your question. This is live, and we are so honored. I am so honored to have our special guest here as we talk about dealing with this big issue that I don't think has gotten enough attention in the media, and that is the whole notion of emotional and physical loneliness. Now, you started talking about the type of guys that you were attracted to that may
Right.
not have been so much abusive but manipulative. What were
Hmm.
some of these, so we can warn, the young ladies out there, what were some
Right.
of the quote game that some of the guys was playing that maybe you didn't discover till later on that they were in fact manipulative?
Yeah, so they were present a lot during the beginning. They were always there. They wanted to woo you and,
Okay.
give you all the compliments. Eventually there were like the lies and them hanging out with another girl that was just a friend, but yeah, there's a
Mm-hmm.
song
See,
about that, but
only just friend.
right. I was about to start singing that, but I didn't want to, I wanted to keep
Ah,
it.
no, 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 no. You're fine. I was just thinking about that. You think about
Hmm.
those sort of songs. The old
Right.
school songs that we listened to. They really was telling a story,
Hmm.
more so than I think the songs that come out today.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about, why do you think so many people, especially women, tend to stay in abusive relationships or are attracted, as you were, to abusive men, and tend to stay in these very unhealthy type of relationships?
Right. Ooh, there's how much time do you have?
Take your time.
I know for me, that's what I knew. That's all I knew. And so whatever was whatever I was most familiar with, whatever I was most comfortable with, that's what I
Okay.
gravitated towards. Um, I feel like a lot of females or males, stay out of fear, maybe fear of the unknown. They don't know
Mhm.
what's going to happen next. Like if I did leave, this could possibly happen, or if I stay, then this. So I feel like we get comfortable, so then we get stuck.
I see.
Um, and I feel like, just to go back on the fear piece of it, a lot of females or males may stay because they're fearful of the physical. So maybe being abused more. So that's why a lot of people tend to stay.
Wow.
Um, yeah. Um, I also feel like people stay because of expectations.
What do you
So
mean by
just meaning,
expectations?
yeah. So expectations of other people, like our family around us.
That-
So a lot of people hear, their family saying, well, they were just a great guy, they were a phenomenal girl, why don't you just go ahead and stay, stick it out, they're a good person. And we're letting all this chatter around us um influence our decisions. So I was
Mhm.
listening to Mel Robbins. Do you know who Mel Robbins is?
Mel Robbins. The name, no.
Yeah. So she's a personal development coach. She's a female. Because a lot of us know like Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, but I
Right.
was actually listening to one of her podcasts, and she was discussing the difference between. Oh, go ahead. Were you
Wait,
about
is
to?
she the one that came up with the countdown? Like instead,
Yes,
yeah, okay, yes,
that's
okay.
her.
I
That's
know when
her.
you started talking, it dawned on me that one
Yeah.
of the things I remember watching her, I think it was on um, either on YouTube or she may have been doing a TED talk. And she said
Mm-hmm.
instead of counting one, two, three,
One,
four,
two,
five, six,
three.
seven,
Uh
it
huh.
raises your anxiety. But that's why when they
Mm-hmm.
do a countdown, if you go from 10 and you include zero, it actually lowers. So yes, go ahead. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I had a little,
Yeah.
I had a little moment there. So yes, yes,
Right. But yeah, she's phenomenal. And Mel, if you're watching this, I'm going to be up there on stage with you one day. I'm claiming it. But she's my mentor and she doesn't even know it yet. But
that's all
but
right.
right. So she was pretty much just discussing like decision making. And so you have the noisy decision and the quiet decision. And what
Mm,
the quiet decision is, it's a decision that you make for yourself, a decision that like this is what's going to benefit me, this is what's going to help me to grow. And so you're doing what's best for you. Like
got you.
nothing is influencing nobody's opinions, nothing is really influencing your decision. With the noisy decision, it's more like you're hearing all this chatter, you're hearing your family, say that you should stay, you should stick it out. And so you're basing whether or not you stay or go in the relationship based off of what other people think is right for you or
Got
best for you. And listen, people always talk, and people always, like, you can never shut people up, people are always going to have an opinion. They're always going to, have something to say about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. I always like to say people's opinion doesn't cut me a check. So
you. Say it
I
again.
don't care about people's opinions. But, I would rather make a quiet decision, something that I know is going to benefit me, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I know both of us are Christians as well, and
Hmm.
one of my favorite biblical verses says that the quiet, still voice,
Hmm.
okay, not the loud, thunderous voice. And a lot of
Right.
times when people look for inspiration, they often are looking for the loud, thunderous, and God said, the mountains on
Right.
fire and there's thunder and
Hmm.
lightning. But really, it is that soft, still voice of peace that you
Right.
receive in your, what we call your spirit,
Hmm.
that allows you to say it's going to be okay,
Right.
despite the storms of life, despite what ship you find yourself on. And
Hmm.
let's face it, a lot of people right now feel as if everyone has abandoned them on the ship.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
we used to say years ago, fellowship meant all the fellas was on the ship. Well, now all the fellas have jumped off the ship And a lot
Right.
of times we feel like it's just me. And
Mhm.
during this season of this pandemic, and you talked about especially expectations of family. Do
Mhm.
you think there's also that expectation? I don't want to be viewed as a failure. I'm 30 years old. All my
Yeah.
sisters are married. Every time I
Mhm.
go around Nana at the family reunion, they're like, "What's wrong with you, girl? Your stuff gonna
Right.
dry up. You know, now you better do something. You better go find you a mate."
Right.
So is it that added type of pressure of those expectations that you talked about that
Mhm.
even if they are not in a relationship because maybe they've not found someone suitable to them,
Right.
that they're hearing those stories, girl, a man is better than no man. How many
Mhm.
times are you tired? Are you going to show up at the family reunions, going to the events, and with no plus one? Okay.
Right.
You and I had a conversation the other day, and you said something that was remarkable. And you talked about dating yourself
Mhm.
and really getting to know yourself. Can you kind of share what did you mean when you talk about dating yourself and really getting to know yourself? Maybe before you even think about a relationship.
Right. Um, for me, it was really hard. So I am an extroverted extrovert. So being alone, being alone, I'm like, oh, I gotta get out of here. No, but I really had to dig deeper. I had to spend time
Okay.
with myself and invest in myself. So for me, I was like, Leanna, you can't expect another human being to give you all of this if you can't give yourself all of that. So if you can't give yourself the I don't know, like if you can't be nice to yourself, if you can't love
Hmm.
yourself, if you can't speak positive things about yourself, why would you even expect another person to do that? And that's the thing. So a lot of people are not whole before they actually get in a relationship. They're still broken. And so they're expecting all this stuff from their significant other, but then they may get it or maybe they may not get it, but they're still not pleased. They're
Hmm.
codependent on somebody else creating happiness for them.
I
That's
see.
not where you find happiness. You find it within yourself. So dating yourself, I literally spent time and it was so hard. So I don't go anywhere by well, I do, but I don't go to I used to didn't go to restaurants by myself. So
Okay.
that was one thing that was really, really, really hard for me. So I started small. I went to Panera by myself. I sat, got a nice little booth, sat, ate my food, and I was mindful of, the people around me. I was mindful with how I was feeling in that moment. So I just literally treated myself out on dates. And I know that sounds stupid. I bought myself certain things and I was nice to myself. I actually liked myself.
Mm,
A lot of people are like, yeah, I love myself, but they really don't like themselves. And
I
that's
see.
like you see a lot of people posing as confident and as if they love themselves, but they're really insecure, they're really hurt, they're really broken.
And
So,
I think we've seen a lot of that in Hollywood. We hear
right.
about the tragic
Mm-hmm.
overdoses, suicides, and
Right.
we scratch our heads and we're like, "Wow." I'm thinking about the gentleman that the comedian Robin Williams. Here's a person who made the world laugh. Now we remember
Right.
him from Mork and Mindy, and we remember him
Mm-hmm.
from all the stand-up comedy, the movies he had
Mrs.
done.
Doubtfire.
Yes, exactly, and suffered from depression, mental health issues, and thought that the final solution, was to take his own life. I think about Bourdain, the chef that went around the world eating different types. David Bourdain, I think his name was, committed suicide, and others that
Right.
either lost their life to drug overdose, and not really happy. And I'm
Right.
wondering, a lot of times people say, man, if I just had the right woman, if I just had the right man, if I had, for some, an extra $1,000 a month, boy, I would be happy. But when we look at the examples, to your point, if you're not truly in love with you
Mm-hmm.
and happy with you, and you said, I like what you said, and like you, that was
Mm-hmm.
something, Leanna, it took me a long time. I loved myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with myself, but I
Right.
could not really say that I really liked myself because
Mm-hmm.
of past mistakes that I had made that were just silly, stupid mistakes. But I
Right.
held on to those because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I heard one person say, I had a mentor tells me the reason that we want to stay present in the moment is that depression dwells in the past and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety dwells in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The present we can control. And
Right.
so, what would you say to that individual or individuals that are watching that are struggling with loving themselves or even liking themselves? So, what were some of the steps you talked about? The small steps of going to Panera Bread. What else did
Mm-hmm.
you do other than maybe just going to Panera? What was some of that deep inner working that you had to do? Did you get a
Right.
coach? Did you therapy? What did you do?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So
Okay.
I actually was the girl that hated, and I know this is crazy. A lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, Leanna, like you're so positive and you're so uplifting. How could you?" But I was actually the female that hated looking at myself in the mirror. I
Hmm.
hated hearing my name. It was bad. Like, and so I went through that rough patch. I think it was like my junior year in high school. That carried on. It got better into college, and then I had more relationships in college and so forth, but I still was lacking something. And it wasn't until I got married and then went through a really rough patch in my marriage and then divorced. Um that's whenever I got therapy. And yes, therapists can see a therapy. I mean, can see a therapist. They can get
Matter of
therapy.
fact, isn't actually encouraged. I mean, because you're dealing with other people's serious life and death issues. And I often say this even
Right.
with ministers or people that are life coaches,
Mm-hmm.
that we're in the helping business. Okay.
Right.
That's a lot of weight to carry. And I often say, where does the pastors or the ministers or the imams, where do they go
Mm-hmm.
when they have to unload? Where do
Right.
other counselors and therapists, who's there for them? Who's there
Right.
for those that are responsible for making sure that we are whole mentally, physically, but
And you want to
may not
know,
necessarily have someone there for them?
right. So you want to know what was the hardest for me?
Yes.
So, one, being a Black woman. Two, being a Christian Black woman. I grew up in a household to where, my family is really loving and they're really supportive. But, just for minorities in general, getting therapy, seeking therapy is frowned upon. They're like, "What? You're not crazy? I'm not going to go talk to this person. No, we don't need this. Just open up a Bible. Let's pray about it. Let's not, like, you don't need, medications. You don't need a therapist. You don't need none of that. Just open up a Bible and pray about it. Like, you'll be
Mhm.
good."
Yeah, just pray it
And
away.
so, right. And the thing is, I have to educate a lot of minority families about this, because so I have provided therapy to kids that come in and they're really like depressed and suicidal. And they're like, I'm not supposed to be here. My parents aren't really supporting me. It causes a lot of strife and conflict in my
Mm.
life. And I had to explain to them that, listen, God created doctors, He created therapists, He created psychiatrists. Like,
Yes,
that's like a person with cancer saying, I can't go get chemo. I'm just going to go pray about it. I'm going to sit in my room. I'm not going to do anything about it. God's word says faith without works is dead. So if you're
dead.
not doing right, so if you're not making the proper preparations to help yourself, you're just going to be stuck. God, that is not what God intended for us to be. He didn't want
Yes,
us stuck.
yes.
So,
The book of Proverbs says that there's safety in the multitude of counselors.
mhm,
And so, you look at King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived,
right.
and he had counselors, okay, that
Mhm,
advised him. And I think oftentimes there's a level, maybe you could speak to this, a level of trust
Right.
where we may not in the communities of color, particularly African American men,
Mhm.
where I mean, unless we dying, unless someone is dragging us, we're not going to the hospital.
Right.
I remember hearing a story. A friend of mine told me that her dad was cutting grass and severed his toe,
Oh my
and
God.
thought he could just basically, it'll be okay. I just wrap it up. No, your toe
Mm-mm.
is hanging over here. Okay.
I would have
And
passed out.
I mean, just that, now I'm all right. I just, suffered through it and not really seeking the help that we really should. And I think some of it
Right.
might be because of historically, we hear about the Tuskegee Airmen experiments, the
Mhm.
LSD experiment that was done on prisoners, and
Right.
all sort of, weird experiments that took place, and some would say continue to take place. And maybe that's part of that apprehension for
Mhm.
men. Plus, from a mental health, why would I go and sit in front of this quote white man or white person and
Yeah.
share all of our family's dirty secrets, and this person may not be able to relate? And
Right.
so I think it's great to have someone that looks like us that's in the
Mhm.
mental health profession that
Mhm.
can have that shared experience. The same way that if
Absolutely.
a person who's Orthodox Jewish
Mhm.
would be able to relate to someone when they're talking about, well, I cannot come in because of Sabbath,
Mhm.
or someone who is Muslim that needs someone that can understand their point of reference. It doesn't mean that a person outside of our race or outside of our culture cannot help us. I think it helps break down another barrier.
Right.
So if we're talking about, there's certain things I think that are unique to African American experience, is unique to Italian American experience, unique to Appalachian American
Mhm.
experience. That good example. I went to college at Ohio University, right on the border of Parkersburg,
Okay.
West Virginia. I could not understand why back in the day, every car had a Confederate flag or truck rather, and a
Mhm.
shotgun in the back.
Right.
I didn't understand it until someone educated me that in Appalachia, giving a 16-year-old a shotgun is a rites of passage, because now that means that he can support the family, he can fend for himself. But I'm like, but why is the shotgun hanging in the back of the car?
Right.
And they explained it. It's just part of their culture. And maybe you experience that in West Virginia. There are certain
Mhm.
things that just it's just part of the culture. It doesn't mean that it's
Right.
right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just part of the culture. And that
Right.
leads me to, how do you overcome some of these cultural barriers? Like, for example, you talked about having to provide therapies for young kids. How do you
Right.
kind of help break down those barriers so they can relate to you and you can relate to them, so that they can get the help that they need?
Right. So for me, I mean, I've lived it. I've literally been through a lot of stuff. So for me personally, I'm able to just use self-disclosure. Clearly, with therapy, you can only do that
Sure.
minimally. With coaching, you can, you're free with this. So I can be like, listen, I've been through hell and back, and but with therapy is it's kind of different. But with kids, I'm able to let them know, like, hey, I used to be you. Like, there's, you can move forward from this. There's a way out of this. And like, and I would just break it down to where they were able to understand it. So,
That is awesome. I want to ask you this. During this pandemic, a lot of women and also men are dealing with this issue of loneliness. Why do you think loneliness, even before the pandemic, I read one report that said the number one issue for Americans is the issue of loneliness. And yet we're more connected. I mean, everyone, I mean, 3-year-olds have mobile devices, okay?
Mhm.
iPads. You walk into, well, when we could walk into restaurants, no one's
Right.
talking. They're all on their, mobile devices. And so we're more connected than ever before. But why is this a big issue? This issue of loneliness, and we're connected. I mean, it's just kind of puzzling to me that we're more connected than ever, and we still have this huge issue of loneliness.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, and that's so crazy that you mentioned that. That's kind of like myself, like whenever I was in my marriage, I was married and I had a spouse, but I felt alone a lot.
Wow.
And so I feel like there's a difference between, being alone and actually feeling lonely. And I felt like, because
Explain
there
that.
was a voice.
Explain that. The
Yeah.
difference. Yeah, yeah. Because I don't want you to move from that because that's a great point. The difference between you said there were times the loneliness versus being alone. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, like one's more physical, one's more emotional. So
Okay.
you're like your loneliness, of course you're gonna feel lonely. Like for an example, for myself, I have no family here. I moved here because I got married. I ended up staying in Maryland. I'm divorced. Hey y'all, I'm divorced. But I ended up staying, but I have like no, like my closest family is my best friend. Sherry, if you're watching this, I love you. No, but yeah, so loneliness is a state of like your feelings, like your emotion, a state
Mm,
of being. Being alone, actually physically alone. You mentioned the cell phones, like that we're
yes,
still connected, but I feel like there's still a division, there's still a separation. Do you ever notice how like, the kids are on their video games or on their phone and the kids are like, put that up. They're still present, they're still there, but they're not connected with the
sure.
family and
That's
like what's going on around them. So I would say that that's the difference, the division. But yeah,
different.
all that to say, but you can still feel lonely and be in a relationship. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I really want to be in a relationship. I want to rush this. I want to be with this person. No, having a body there, you can still feel lonely just with the body there. You can still feel empty. So,
Wow, wow.
yeah.
That is totally amazing. Um, one of something that I thought about when you were talking, and that is this whole, we think they're connected via mobile devices, internet, but they're not connecting to each other
Right.
on a very deep level.
Hmm.
Are you seeing that also in relationships where they tend to be superficial? Where I just look at the music videos that my son, he's 17 years old, and I can only watch maybe one or two, and then my little bit of hair I do got left and starts falling off, which ain't much because it's so up in your face. There's not the um, romance of the songs anymore. There's not. It's just like I met this girl at the club. I took her home, and bam, bam. And
Bam,
it's
bam.
like,
Thank
where's
you,
the
ma'am.
romance? Yeah, where's the romance? Where is
Right.
the wooing, the courting? You know,
Hmm.
the songs. Like my girl. I got sunshine on a rainy day. You know, it just seems like it's so up in your face now, where they skip
Right.
through the romance, the date. Matter of fact, um, young people have the term hookups now. They're not even dating. They just like, hey, I like you, you like me. Let's hook up for tonight. I may see you tomorrow. I may never see you, but it's all good. What is that doing when you think about now in this COVID situation? I'm just wondering how are people even dating anymore? It just seems weird. You go from this stuff being up in your face, the hookups, to, or maybe they're not practicing social distancing. They just saying, forget this. You know what? We just gonna get together, and if we get sick, we get sick. Oh well.
I'm only laughing. Oh gosh. Woo, Jesus take the wheel. Only because to answer your question, a lot of people are doing like online dating. And so, clearly we're adults. So we're able to like link up with whoever we want to link up with, at our own risk. I work in a hospital, so Lord forgive me. And I see like COVID, firsthand. So
Mhm.
I get the ins and outs and I see things from a different perspective. But so I actually, this was, I would say in March, the end of March, the beginning of April, I met somebody online and, we were chatting and they're from the DMV area. We
Okay.
actually met up. I guess that's not like social distancing, but he didn't end up being, my person, the person for me,
Sure.
but we still met up and um yeah, so a lot of people nowadays are just doing the online thing. And I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with that. I don't know. At first I was solely against it, and then I'm like, "Whoa, I'm getting some luck." And then it ended up like leaving a sour taste in my mouth. So now
I
I'm just
see.
like, "Okay, God, I'm trusting you. It's out of my hands, whatever." So,
That's something that is interesting. I've heard great stories and I've heard horror stories of,
yeah.
this person's profile seems to be perfect. They got all the right words, they got the perfect, remember the old glamour shot pictures, on there. And then you meet
Yep.
for tea or you meet for coffee and you're looking at them and you're looking at their picture and it's like someone lied.
Right.
And
But it's so superficial. That's the
yeah.
outward. So I did a post, and it said, "Are you not only fine on the outside, but are you fine on the inside?" A lot of people
Mm,
are like, "Man, they are fine. They look good." I'm the one that's like, "Wait, let me take notes. Let me analyze
mhm.
this. Let me figure out what's going on underneath because that's like you're stuck with that. Like, yeah, no.
And one of the things that I'm laughing because it's so true is particularly men, because I do believe you could disagree with this. I think
Uh-oh.
men are sight stimulated. You know, I think
Absolutely.
I think God created us that way. That if we see someone who is pleasing to our eyes, then it's more likely we're going to step to that person to at least put our quote bid in. I don't
Oh
know how you
Lord.
really do that in this environment of social distancing. We were sort of chatting in the green room about this. Are people going to show up in bubble suits?
Oh my gosh. Did you
You actually had a
see?
story about that, right?
I told you about, okay, you
Story, yes.
guys. Yes. So there was this article about this girl that was out on her rooftop. She was just getting some fresh air. And there was this guy that saw her and was like, "Oh my gosh, she's gorgeous. I want to talk to her, but we're quarantined. So how can I do it?" So he took his drone and he attached a cute little note to it and flew it over to her and she got it, and then he ended up scheduling like a little date. So he had the drone set up to where he was able to see her and then she could see him, and they literally cooked whatever meal, had it up on the rooftop. But eventually they're like, "Hey, we want to meet." So sweet. Take
Oh
notes,
wow.
fellas. So then he went and ordered this like big bubble and put himself in it. Oh my gosh, listen, if you want to win my heart, go get your bubble. Go get your bubble.
Kind of remind me, remember the old, this might be way before your time. There was a movie called The Boy in the Bubble
Oh
that
gosh.
he had some type of disease where he couldn't touch individuals. And so
Oh,
they
okay.
had constructed this like a gyroscope sort of thing, like a bubble that was
Mm.
plastic that allowed him to at least go outside and experience what he could not experience because of this rare disease. So maybe we're gonna start having, instead of date night, just bubble nights, right?
Hey,
Literally bumping into each other. And
right?
but I think people are being real creative. I think this is a
Hmm.
season where relationships, and one way of dealing with, we want to talk about strategies in a little bit. One way of dealing with loneliness, you talk about dating yourself, in the previous segment, I've also seen a lot of, they're called virtual parties
Yeah.
or happy hours. My
Mm-hmm.
partner, for example, Stacy, I know you're watching.
Hi,
Kudos to you.
Stacy.
And she was sharing with me with her sorority, they were having a happy hour, virtual happy hour.
Oh.
Also, my dear friend Yvette, she's a speech pathologist. You know, she's been to some events where no one's touching each other, but they're not necessarily virtual. They just very spread out, and it's kind of
Okay.
cool in a way.
Right.
But there's this whole virtual, virtual summits. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen some virtual graduations. And so,
Mm-hmm.
is this perhaps the new normal that we just going to have to get used to an online presence of meeting people, of building relationships? And I think in some ways it might be better than the
Mm-hmm.
traditional. Because I think if you're online, there's the issue of safety, number one, because
Right.
it forces you to have a conversation, I think, and get to know the person rather than a physical encounter
Absolutely.
where emotions are, raging, and next thing you know, you're waking up to this person going, "Who are you?"
Right.
Reminds me of this one episode in the TV series Empire, where the
Oh.
young boy went to Vegas and ended up marrying someone he didn't even like. Didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
happened. Just got drunk and woke up like, "Who are you? We got married," And these sort of link ups or hookups. And so I think this whole notion of how we date or how people
Mm-hmm.
date, I think it's forever changed. And
Right.
one of the things that intrigues me, but also bothers me, are for young people. It breaks my heart where you see the young kids crying because they didn't have a graduation this year. They're
Right.
upset that they were looking forward to being crowned prom king or queen. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Or weddings. I was talking with a colleague of mine, and his daughter was scheduled to get married in Hawaii in April.
Ooh.
And what do you do? Okay. And
Right.
so, what advice would you give to young people that are saying, should I just take the risk, or should I really protect myself? But I don't know how to protect myself because there's this part of me that I want to have physical contact because they grew up being social.
Right.
And yet we're telling them not to be as social, to practice social distancing, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
going in young people's ears and out the other one. Because you walk out to the park, I'm
Absolutely.
not saying I'm social distancing at all. And so, what would you say to them so that they can stay safe, but also have some semblance of adolescence?
The only thing is that I feel like with teens, there's only but so much talking. They're still gonna do what they
Mm,
want to do. So I can spit however many words at them and be like, "Yeah, you want to really be safe. You want to do this." They're not gonna listen. I would just say, I don't know. I would definitely pray about it. Like if it's
mhm,
something, if you feel in your gut, like, I don't know about this, don't do it. If you have the second guess or think twice about it, I wouldn't do it. I don't know. With teens, is that's a tricky
yeah,
because I know
yeah.
I'm just seeing myself as a teen. You don't want to hear it. Just like you said, it goes in one ear and out the other. Like there's certain things that, and that's just with individuals as a whole. Like there's
Mm,
certain things that people, that one person may value that another person doesn't value. So that's even with adults or in
mhm.
relationships or whatever. So if they're not valuing the advice that you're giving them, they're not going to do it.
Mm. What about those that say, okay, I'm 50, I'm 60, maybe 70 years old. I can't go to the VFW. I can't go to the lodge.
Right.
We're not having fraternity meetings or sorority. I mean, that's where I normally went. There's, the church couples meeting group. That's not happening. So I want this not only to be about young people that might be savvy when it comes to the internet, but what about those that may not be technologically savvy? They barely um, just learned how to use a cellular phone. Okay,
Hmm.
so what should they be doing, or what advice would you give to those that say I don't know anything about this technology? Does the phone still work?
So I would say it's really not about the technology. I know here more now more than ever, I have been focusing on like some of my other goals. So like right here, I have like bits and pieces of my vision board that I'm putting together. I'm actually, yes, I'll send you pictures of that once it's all together. But I'm actually just doing things that I like to do. Like what happened to reading a book? I've been reading
Mm,
more personal development books. Right now, I'm reading a book called It's Okay to Not Be Okay.
I love it.
That's I love it, and it's so good, and it has a really good word with it, a really good message. But so I've been reading more. I have been cooking more. It's been saving me money. I've been paying off debt and stuff because I've been in a house.
Mm,
Hey, woo woo. No, but I've
awesome.
actually just been doing things that I like to do. Like I have a book that I'm working on. So I'm gradually, putting together certain pieces for that. So just it's not about the technology. It's not about the phone. Like if anything, I my phone is on silent a lot because I'm just trying to stay focused. So use this
Mhm.
time as a time to grow.
That's awesome, and not just catch up on the last 10 seasons of your favorite show that you've missed because you've been working. I believe that this is
Yeah.
a season where we should be doing some reflection, that we
Hmm.
should be looking at what can I do now to make myself better, and
Better.
it doesn't
Hmm.
require technology, such
Right.
as reading books. I'm spending a lot of time creating new content,
Hmm.
putting together these great podcasts, um, and I'm really finding that this has been a time for me personally to reconnect with Lyman. Are you
Right.
also finding
Absolutely.
that you're also reconnecting with yourself and maybe
Hmm.
discovering some things about you? Say, wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it's been hard. I'm being transparent. It has been so hard, especially, being alone in it's just me here. And so having to address some of the things that I never addressed. I think
Mm,
that's the issue. A lot of people hate this quarantine and stuff and being at home with their spouse or being at home alone because they're having to confront things that they just used other distractions to
I
mask it
see.
with. So, yeah, use this time to grow. Use this time to make your relationships better, not just with your family, but with yourself. That's the main thing. You're always people are going to come and go, but you're living in this body here and now. So
Yeah.
that's what you should
My
focus on.
good friend, and she's actually my personal acupuncturist, Jill,
Okay.
she said something that was very powerful when we were talking the other day. And I actually had her on one of my podcasts a couple of weeks ago. And Jill talked about sunlight, taking
Mhm.
walks, getting out of
Mhm.
the house,
Right.
and vitamin D deficiency, which we can get through sunlight. And also being able to not look at this as just a bad situation, but
Right.
finding what's the good in this. You talked about she suffered, which was a good death. There's a lot of
Mhm.
things that needed to die, but she kept them alive because she was so
Mhm.
busy, distracted.
Right.
And she finally was able to say, you know what? This doesn't serve a purpose. I'm going to allow this to die. And some of those
Exactly.
relationships that she
Yeah.
looked at those relationships and she said to me, she said, Lyman, I had to make a decision between relationships that added value
Mhm.
versus relationship that just drained me. And she
Exactly.
was holding on to some relationship that was just they were vampire relationship. They just sucked the life force out of
Mhm.
her. And she said
Absolutely.
once she said doesn't mean they were bad people. They just weren't for her. And once she
Right.
severed the relationships, All of a sudden, she got her life back. She got her vitality back. She was able to be more focused and get a lot done. I was talking the other day with my partner, Stacy, and she's in a high demand business. As we're not working together as far as a union boss, in Dayton, Ohio, and she's really making some great things happen. And we were just sharing, when you carry the weight of making decisions that affect other people's lives, that's
Mhm.
a lot of weight. So, what would you
Sure.
say to those of us that we're in the helping business, like a Jill, who's an
Mhm.
acupuncturist, but now, she's in a touchy business, so now she had to shift to do some
Right.
online stuff, like Yvette, who's
Mhm.
a speech pathologist, like, Stacy, whom what would
Mhm.
you say to those individuals that we carry that burden of helping, but we may not always seek help? What would you say to people like us? 'Cause we need to hear it as well.
Right. So shout out to my best friend again. I'm going to use her reference. So she said, put your mask on first. She was telling me this actually today. I was feeling really anxious. I was listen, it's so crazy. I work on a psych unit full time. So I was like, listen, Sherry, like I'm just feeling really overwhelmed. She's like, you're doing too much. Like you're taking on everybody's, stuff and you're not focusing on yourself. She was like, right now you're in your purpose, things are going to be thrown at you. She's like, but learn how to put your mask on first. And that's what I would tell everyone else. So just like
Um,
in a domestic violence situation, a lot of females or males stay because they're like, the children. I don't want to take my children away from their parent or, blase, blase. And so I would definitely say that you can't take care of your children if you don't take care of yourself. Or like for my mom, who is my grandmother's primary caregiver. My grandma had a stroke, and so she's paralyzed on her left side. And so my mom is just constantly bending over backwards just to care for her. And she's not getting the care that she needs for herself. And then she's exhausted and she's having health issues. Put your mask on first. So just
wow.
with myself, I have to take care of myself because I can't take care of anybody else if I'm not well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
That is so true. Uh, Personally, for me, I have found solace in having great friendships. And I'll be honest
Mhm.
with you, I got a good friend down in Texas. And one of the things I'll tell you about my friend, by trade, she's an engineer. Okay.
Okay.
You don't call her when you need a pep talk.
Uh-uh.
You call her when you want to hear the truth. Okay.
Okay.
And she's in Austin, Texas. And I love her dearly because she speaks truth.
Mhm.
And there's times where I would just pick up the phone and I will call and I say, sis, give it to me straight. And she'll say, you really want to hear it? Don't ask the question if you don't want to hear. I say, no, I need to
Exactly.
hear it. And you need those types of friends that are not the cheerleaders, right?
Right.
You need the ones that are going to give you the truth.
Mhm.
They don't have, sometimes they don't have a good filter, all right? But they will tell you not what you want to hear, but
What
what
you
you
need.
need to hear.
Absolutely.
And that I've always appreciated. And I've also appreciated the ones that are my cheerleaders. I can call them up. They're
Mhm.
like, man, what you're doing is great. Even when I know it's not good, they're gonna tell me it's good. That's just
Right.
who they are. They are encouragers, right?
Right.
And so it's having that balance in our relationships of
Mhm.
those that will give it to us straight and
Mhm.
those that will truly give us that pep, the
Right.
motivation that we need. And that's so encouraging when you talked
Mhm.
about put your mask on first. I love that.
Mhm.
I often
Right.
will say to my coaching clients that, and Stacy can bear witness to this, when you're on an airplane, everyone has ever flown hear the same message. Should we
Mhm.
lose cabin pressure, an
Yep.
oxygen mask will descend, right?
Mhm.
Although the bag is not inflating, oxygen is still flowing. Then it says, to your point, put your mask on first
First. Mhm.
before assisting your neighbor or the person
Yep.
next to you. And so often we're running around the airplane, losing
Yep.
altitude, putting
Mhm.
everybody else's mask on, and we're almost asphyxiated at the door
Yep.
because we didn't put ours on. And I think
Yep.
some of it because we feel guilty,
Mhm.
but it goes back to what you talk about self care and
Mhm.
taking care of us. Whether
Right.
that be, my biggest challenge is sleeping. Okay.
Mine
I
too.
can work from sun up to sundown. It's just in my DNA. Yvette said something to me. She said, "You got to rest." I'm like, "Man, I like to burn both ends." But I realized something. So, Yvette, if you're watching, shout out to you. Thank you. Great advice. I really appreciate it. I realized that when I went to bed at a decent hour, now for me, that's about 11 o'clock instead of 3 in the morning. So I'm making
Ooh,
progress. I'm
that's
making
past my
progress. Help,
bedtime. Listen,
help
I'm a
me,
granny.
counselor. Help me, counselor. I'm making progress. Okay, I'm shaving 3 hours off. But I realized that when I get up still at 6, 7 in the morning, I feel better. Okay.
Mhm.
That's a huge adjustment for me. And that segues into our final segment, which is strategies to break free. And it's a process, just like for me getting proper sleep. For
Right.
someone else, it might be pushing the plate away. It might be alcohol or cigarettes, whatever it is. All of us have challenges that we're dealing with. Okay.
Right.
Some are more physical, some are internal. And one of the questions that I have is, we spend some time discussing problems. What should a person do to prepare themselves for making changes, whether it's a physical change, an emotional change, or even a spiritual change? What sort of what did you do? What were some of the preparation or steps that they should take, or maybe your own personal journey? What steps did you take um, to help you prepare to say, you know what, I need to make a change. And if you could share
Right.
that one great story about when you transitioned from being a model. A lot of people don't know you was also a model.
Yeah, I still kind of am, but not
Okay,
really. We'll talk
okay,
about that.
sure.
Um, but I would say the first thing that I did to transition to change was acknowledging that there ever was a problem, that there's something that needed to be fixed or worked on. I know a lot of people, and even in therapy, with addictions, like they have to acknowledge that they actually have the addiction before we can even move forward. So if you're
Mm,
in denial about you being broken or being hurt or you know in denial about just a lot of stuff, then you're not able to fully address what needs to be turned around. And so I would definitely say acknowledge that, something needs to be worked on for you to even be able to make a change or be able to grow. What you were talking about me switching, transitioning from modeling to what I'm doing
yes.
now. Yeah, so I modeled for about 3 years. I still do it. But for me, it became like really, really like superficial. Like you had girls that were like really insecure and hurting themselves that were
Hmm.
not acknowledging that they needed some improvement. And so you had them projecting their insecurities onto other people and they're
Got you.
knocking people. And like for me, I take it very seriously. Like, mental health, like depression, anxiety, eating disorders within modeling, like it's huge. And so I'm like, it's not cool to be projecting whatever hurt and pain that you got going on onto somebody else who doesn't even deserve it? And so I was like, okay, let me fall back. Let me figure out another way to still incorporate it, but not to
Right.
be that hands on. So I decided so like on my Instagram page or Facebook, I still post like some of my modeling pictures, but I put words of empowerment.
I see.
So it's not anything, I'm not posting just to get the likes or the followers, or I'm not posting to promote a certain brand or a certain outfit, like who looks best in this. I'm posting
Hmm.
to uplift people. And the crazy part is that I have moms that's like, listen, I just had my second baby. I hate looking at myself. I have this extra pudge, you posting that. And I'm like, listen, I'm a thick chick. Like today I posted a picture, I had on a crop top and I had on a see-through skirt. So like you could actually see like my thighs or whatever. And people are like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? Because I just did it.
You
Like
just
I
did it.
made that quiet decision for me. I didn't listen to the everybody else, what they had to say. I did it for me.
But
So
see, man, that is so powerful because that whole empowerment and confidence piece.
mhm.
So many people will say, I'm not a size two. I could never model or I could never take a picture. Would you say whatever a midriff with what's I don't know what a
I was
midriff is.
showing it all. Listen,
Oh, okay.
listen. I love myself. It took me. That's
Okay.
called wholeness, y'all. That's called wholeness. Eventually, if you're not there yet, you'll be there. Listen.
You'll be there. But I have noticed like some of your pictures, they are very, very tasteful
Thank you.
and it shows the essence of your personality. Okay. I think a lot of times people may look at pictures and they say, oh, that's a cute outfit. But you're right. The ones that I've seen on Instagram, for example, or even on Facebook, I love the captions that you,
Mhm.
so they are very motivating. And it's not just a picture and it doesn't mean anything. You don't know if she's promoting a brand, shoes,
Right.
or she just like, I thought I looked cute, so I put this up there. And so there seems to be some intent
Yeah.
behind what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I really believe is key, being intentional about making those changes, about having a plan. And so when you
Mhm.
were going through your metamorphosis from not even liking how you look, the girl who couldn't even look at herself in the mirror, didn't like the
Yeah.
sound of her name, to I love myself. I was a model for 3 years. I'm still posting pictures. I just put one up in a midriff and my thighs or legs hanging out. How did you get there? I mean, what was that
um.
transformation like to go from I don't even like my name, looking at myself to I'm here, y'all.
Mhm. For me, I had to stop making excuses for myself.
Mm,
I blamed a lot of how I felt about myself on people that's hurt me in the past, my dad or another boyfriend, a past boyfriend. And I'm like, I have to take ownership for me. And I honestly just dug deeper in the word. I figured out that, listen, God created me how, like in his image, how he wanted me to be. Like
yes,
he's the potter, we're the clay. A lot of people are like, gosh, I don't want to have to change this. I don't want to have to be this way. And they're like, oh, it hurts too bad. And listen, the clay, like the potter, the on the wheel, and like the digging and the molding and stuff, it's gonna hurt at first, but it's gonna be something beautiful in the end. A lot of people aren't willing to one, take ownership, but then they're not willing to get out of their comfortable space. They're
mm,
just stuck. And so yes, it's going to be painful, but that's the bright side. Like that's how you're going to be able to. There's a saying that says turning your mess into a message, and
I love it.
that's exactly what I did. Like I've been through a lot of crap, but I didn't use that to feel pity for me, do this. No, I'm like, listen, I've been through this. This is where I'm at now. Let me help you get there. Let's do it together. You're not in it by yourself. And so that's what I want to tell my audience on my social media platforms. You're not doing it alone. I've done it too. I'm right there with you. So,
And just think about the number of young girls they could see you out there
yeah.
that may have body image issues that they're working through, where maybe someone said, you're not pretty, or your hair isn't like so and so's hair, or you're too dark, or one person, I think Stacy was telling me that um, someone said, well, so and so couldn't be your grandmother because she's too light, or something like that.
Oh,
And
wow.
kids, they hear this and it affects them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you can't do this because you're not smart enough. All these labels that we tend to put on each other, and what
Right.
the quote school system has put on so many kids. I think about the great, in my opinion, one of the greatest motivational speaker, Les Brown, where a teacher told him
Love him.
that he was basically mentally retarded, that he couldn't do anything. I think about Michelle Obama, where guiding when she was excited to go to Yale, to wanted to follow her brother to Yale, or was it Princeton? I think it was Princeton University. And the guidance counselor said, "You're not Princeton material. Don't set your expectations so high." I
Wow.
remember even uh, family members, friends of our family rather, where a gentleman wanted to be a chopper pilot in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And they said, "Well, we don't have any openings for, quote, colored chopper pilot, but you could be a mechanic." And he spent 4 years in the military just being a mechanic and never got to actually fly. And sometimes people put us in these pigeonholes where they think the only thing that we can do is what someone else has said we can do, rather than to explore the vastness of what we can do. You know, I tell people I'm more than just this. I'm more
Mhm.
than just that. There is, and I'm gonna use Stacy comment where she says, she said her whole format is about diamonds. And she says there are different types of diamonds. There are display diamonds, there are industrial diamonds, there are mining diamonds, there are cleaning diamonds, but they're still
Mhm.
diamonds.
Right.
And a lot of times we spend more attention looking at the solitaires of the world, but
Mhm.
they're no more as important or less important than the industrial diamond that grinds,
Mhm. Mhm.
the so all of us have these hidden, the Bible says that we have these hidden treasures, okay?
Right.
And I believe it's up to us to mine them. One person
Right.
said, mind your own business, which literally means dig deep on the inside to
Mhm.
pull out those hidden treasures.
Right.
For someone trapped in an abusive relationship right now, they're watching this, or they will watch the rebroadcast of this. What advice? You've been there, you've seen many there, you've counseled, you provide therapy for the children of those that have been caught in the crossfires of abusive relationship. What advice would you give them now? Just take the moment to speak directly to that person that feels trapped, or they know
Right.
someone who's trapped in an abusive relationship.
One, I would just say to get out. Like it's not about them anymore. It's solely about you. Constantly you're hearing that you're not good enough, like you're not worth it, but you are. Like you're so beautiful. You were created for purpose. And so I would just tell you, like, get out. It's about you now. Switch it up. Like
Mm,
throw a curveball.
yeah,
There's
it's not
resources.
about, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
about the abuser. It's
Mhm.
about that individual
It's
who's
about
being
them,
abused
right?
to say no more.
It's
And you
about
started
their
talking about some
well-being.
resources. Go ahead. You was great to talk about some resources.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, so for my mom, like it took her so long to get out because she wasn't familiar with all of the other resources. There are so many domestic violence shelters, and I actually every year I'll pick like a random one here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area because I know that there's moms out there that are stuck in abusive relationships that can't get out. They can't afford um, things to get their household started. So I'll donate if I haven't used certain pots and pans. I'll donate that, or certain clothing items, certain
Hmm.
blankets, and things like that, just to help them get on their feet. There are so many resources, and a lot of people. Well, one, they are afraid to even start searching for anything like for other
Yeah.
options. But two, I feel like people are not promoting it enough. Like October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, purple. Woo, woo. So I'm always repping like different resources and things like that. So if you are in an abusive relationship, please
Mm.
feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than willing to pray with you. That's the biggie. I'll pray with you. I will encourage you. I will provide other resources for you. There's always a way out. And so I believe in you. I just want you to believe in you.
Wow, that is so powerful. And we'll talk about final thoughts. And
Yeah.
if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing, they want to follow you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so my my website is actually in the work. So it should be up and going within the next 2 weeks. So it's pearlywhite.com. But if you go if you visit that right now, it's either gonna show up like half of the page or maybe it's not gonna pop up at all. But it's pearlywhite.com. Visit that in about 2 weeks. But I'm on my social media platforms. So you can on Facebook and Instagram you can go to Pearl underscore Lee underscore White, and it'll be me. You can hit me up. Also, my business email is evolve at pearlywhite.com. So please feel free. I'm always answering my emails, my DMs, only if it pertains to what I'm doing here. I get a lot of DMs. It's like, hey,
Right.
beautiful, how you doing? And I'm like, no.
I think that there are those that will look at you, they will watch this podcast, the re airing of it, and they will say to themselves, this is exactly what I needed. And I want to say, as the host, this is exactly what I needed. I thank you. The information that you shared was just so insightful. Uh, and the stories that you shared, that calls us to think, to go from someone who didn't even like the sound of her name to being able to counsel and touch thousands of lives through your social media platform, what you do at the hospital, what you do as a therapist, a social worker, and now moving and transitioning into coaching. I'm going to make a prediction, and I don't normally do this. And I think I
Uh-oh.
said this to you a couple weeks ago. You haven't seen anything. You have a voice that the world needs to hear, and you will touch thousands of lives by simply being you. I love the tag name Pearly White
Oh, you're gonna make
because a
me
lot of
cry.
times, because think about this, a lot of times we think we have to be perfect
Right,
to be, quote, adorned in white.
right,
And I love what you said. You took the mess that you had endured
right,
and you transformed it into a message of hope.
right.
Again, I just want to thank you for being my special guest. And I'm sure others will also get in contact with you. So once again, just give us your. I know you said your website will be up in about 2 weeks. Just give us
2 weeks.
that
Hmm.
information again. How people can reach you. Is it better to
Yeah.
reach you on Instagram or social media? Just give us those details again.
Yeah. So I am active on both Facebook and Instagram. I have more engagement on Instagram, but it's going directly to my phone. So I see all of it. So on Instagram and Facebook, it's Pearl underscore Lee, Lee underscore White. So Pearly White, you'll find me there. Or either you can email me at evolve at pearlywhite.com. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share, or I'm looking to see if we have any, questions or any comments.
Drop your comments below. I
Actually,
love you guys.
we do have one that came in, and that their
Okay.
question is, how did your parents or your mom in particular feel about what you're doing now?
Yeah, so my mom is definitely, she's really supportive actually. At first she was like, "Oh my gosh, what are people going to say once they hear this
Hmm.
story?" And I'm like, "Listen, mom, like this is our opportunity to help somebody else that was stuck in the same situation where we've been." And so like once I broke that down to her, then she was like, "You know what? Go for it. God is
Mm.
using you, go for it." So she's so
Yeah,
supportive. I called her right before this call, and she's like, "I'm praying for you, baby." I'm like, "Thank you, mom."
yeah. When I wrote, I can really relate to that. When I wrote my first book, Shattered Math, it
Hmm.
went around the world, became an instant bestseller,
Look
and
at
that
you.
was a book that talks about my own evolution and having to deal with sexual abuse for 3 years at the hand of a teacher. And I remember when the book came out, there was discussion with, I didn't even tell my family, number one, until the book was published. And my sister, my baby sister,
Oh,
Mika, she the one that told mom and pops. And part of the reason for me not sharing before I released the book was, but I was very careful about what I put in the book about the family, because my mom and I shared that my parents did everything that was humanly possible. And you have to remember, this is pre cell phones, pre internet. My mother did everything that she's supposed to. She went to the police, did all this stuff.
yeah.
And sometimes family, and I want to speak to those of you that you need to write a book, you need to do something, but you are afraid. What will the neighbors say? What will family members say? And you said something earlier that I remember thinking this. And I told my mother, whom I love more than anything, Mom, it wasn't about you. It was
Mm.
about me and my healing. It was
Yep.
something I had to do. And there's a lot of people out there, you need to do something, whether that's writing a book. And a lot of times, I say, listen, yes, I've written 6 books, 3 of which became bestseller, but that's not important. I wrote them because it was a mandate on my life to do
Right.
it.
Yep.
And a lot of times people say, well, how do I write a bestseller? Well, I don't think you write with the understanding it's going to be a bestseller. I think you write a message of hope, and you find that audience that will resonate with that message, and
Right.
they will share it as they've done with my books. And I think that's what happened. I think that's what's going to happen with you. I think
Thank
there's
you.
several books on the inside of you. I think that your story is much bigger than what you believe, my sister. And I'm telling you, we will be seeing you on major, major stages. I speak it in truth.
Hey, I
Now
received that.
don't forget about little old me now. When you up there, at
Oh
least get a
God, I'm trying to get
backstage
to your
pass.
level, Mr.
Now,
Bestseller.
thank you. But you know what? This has been good. Thank you everyone for watching. This has
Thank
been
you.
your focus driven day with your podcaster, Lyman Montgomery, and my very special anointed guest, Leanna Pearly Lee White. Thank you. God bless you. And always stay focused, my friend. Till next time.